welcome to Paris, welcome to France.
Thank you. Hi Frank, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Comment ça va?
Yeah, très très bien, merci.
Your French is parfait.
Yeah, my French. Thank you so much. After that we'll do the interview again in French and I will tell you the same.
No, my français is...
Yeah, the last time you were here I heard you speak about Le Fantôme de Edith Piaf in l'Olympia.
Well,
that was in French.
A little bit, maybe, yes.
Maybe the ghost will be there tonight.
I hope so, yes.
Yeah.
I never met Edith Piaf, but I always loved the music.
Yeah.
The voice, la voix,
And this,
de la guerre, and also of the, like
yeah, and this venue, l'Olympia, is very special here.
Well, yes, I think the other one that we played, the other venue, the Olympia, may have been the one that she sang at. So I think
Yeah,
it's
because they moved it.
move it, yes,
yeah.
but hopefully the spirit will move with the with the venue,
Indeed.
the geography.
Okay, so let's get started. Let's start with your new album, Wolflight.
Yes.
It has received a lot of great reviews, both from the press, from the fans, and I keep reading very nice things about it. And
Yes.
I've listened to it myself, and I
Yes.
think it sounds a little bit more kind of 70s
Right.
influence than the previous
Yes.
album. So I was wondering if you think that's the
Right.
reason of its success.
Well, I paid everyone to give it good reviews, so...
Oh, that's how you do it.
yeah, that's right, that's how I
Okay.
get so many good reviews.
Personal notes for that.
And then I think there was something about the 70s that was good, the spirit of the
It's
70s,
coming back.
and also the 60s. I think. I think at that time music could go its own way. There weren't so many rules. People weren't trying to have hit singles as much. You know, there were albums artists, and that was respectable to do that. You know, whether you were Genesis in the 70s or whether you were
Long song.
Led Zeppelin, long songs, yes, could do that. King Crimson could do that. Jethro Tull, Procol Harum, many bands, Gentle Giant. You know, we were part of all that, Pink Floyd and ELP. And that's just some of the bands that were around at that time. All of whom I think were making albums rather than singles. Occasionally those bands would have hit singles, but it wasn't the raison d'etre. It was not that. The idea was to make albums. So I think with this, I wasn't trying to have any hit singles. It's not really the sort of thing that
It's about the music.
Yeah, it is about the music, and it's about trying to make an album that's really an album rather than something that's a collection of potential hit singles. Because I think that's more transparent, and it's not the way that I want to work.
That's nice. And how is it to hang out with wolves for the cover?
Wonderful. It was one of the
Safe?
best. Sorry?
It was safe?
Yes. There's a guy and his wife who raises wolves at 1 hour outside Rome, and I thought, you know, we're going to be shooting pictures all day. I hope they're going to be friendly, because there were about 10 or 11 wolves in an enclosure, and I thought, well, I've got to be professional about this. But as soon as I went in, they made friends with me. They were lovely, they were wonderful.
That's amazing.
They started licking me and bringing their babies.
Really?
Yes, it was absolutely wonderful.
Great experience.
It was a great experience, yeah, from creatures that are considered to be wild animals. They were beautiful, and they seemed to know what you're thinking, and I got to feed them and jump around with them, all sorts of stuff. It was just wonderful, just great. Yeah, there's a picture you might be able to see.
Oh wow.
We might want to show that for the camera. I think that's one of Joe's pictures. That's them. You know, they brought the cubs, the little babies here,
Nice.
and it was just lovely. It was an adorable day, wonderful. I was a little nervous about it at first.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They were just wonderful. But at one point, I was taking a picture of them where we were sitting down with them in another place. We took them to a place where there was some ruins, and I was sitting down, and I had them, four of them, on a lead, and you could feel this tremendous power that was going on. You know, that was the thing. So if they wanted to run, I would end up being dragged behind them like a chariot, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a great feeling,
Fantastic.
and I think they have telepathy. I think they know what you're thinking. They seem to be like the aristocrats of the dog world.
You can feel that.
Yeah, you could feel that. You could feel an affinity with them, and you could see immediately why early man would befriend them and use them as a totem. Yeah, great experience, and I recommend it to anyone who has a chance to meet them. They're just they're fantastic, wonderful.
Great. So I'm moving on to the tour now.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, where did you get the idea to have a row installed to replace a knee bass?
Well, Nick wasn't available first of all.
Yeah.
He was working with Stephen Wilson, and it looked as if Stephen was going to be playing for months and months and months, and then Stephen cancelled some shows. But by then we'd already agreed. Nad had said, you know, Royner used to be a bass player, and he's offered if you would like it, he would be like to be part of the band. So I said, well, yeah, wouldn't he be overqualified to do that, because he's a great guitarist?
Yeah.
And so it means, you know, we get to play together, but for instance, with the Genesis songs, he gets to play bass and 12-string, sometimes variacs, and on some of the shows, although tonight we have to do a shorter show because there's a curfew, he gets to play lead guitar with me, but I think that's more difficult to do tonight because of the nature of things, and we have another special guest tonight, which is Amanda Lehman, who's going to sing with us as well.
She's here.
Yes, she's going to be here for the Paris show. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
So talking about guests, I was wondering if there's any chance that you will invite one of your old Genesis friends to play a song with you one of these days. I mean, people would be thrilled to see Phil Collins sing Blood on the Rooftop, or I don't know, Peter sing Carter.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? And
Yes.
and probably at the point where that's possible. You know, if any of them would like to do any of that, of course they're welcome. You know, I just don't like to ask for favours. From people if they you know, have busy lives, and I'm obviously keeping the Genesis Museum open. Partly, it's part of what I do. But I think we made some wonderful music together back in the day, which is why I'm still doing some of those songs. But the set at the moment, we're not doing the ones I was doing on stage before. This is, you know, it's different ones. We only kept two from that. The ones we've added are Get 'Em Out by Friday, Can Utility and the Coastliners, After the Ordeal, Mademoiselle on Broadway, A Hairless Heart. Yes, we kept Musical Box and Further Fifth.
Cinema Show, I saw that.
Those, Cinema Show, that's right, yes, all of those, yeah.
So I was wondering, because there's more and more Genesis tribute band.
Yes.
You know, the Musical Box, they're selling out pretty much everywhere they play, and when you play the Genesis Revisited, it was a wonderful success.
It's all my fault.
I was wondering, how do you explain that?
I think the music is what endures, and I know that the band Genesis have distanced themselves, almost disowned the early material because they prefer not to do it. But there are so many tributes to it, so the music endures. And
it's like the Beatles, it's all about emotion and music of Genesis.
Well, in a way, you know, what the Beatles did is really it's classical music in a way. It's instinctive classical music, because there are classic songs that survive. Any music that survives, and as you know, the Genesis songs come with a certain degree of complexity, so you can't do it without a full commitment. To do it well, it takes rehearsal and memory, and the willingness of a whole team to play like one instrument together. It's the strength of it is in the ensemble approach, and I think, you know, lyrically rich and deep and varied, so many things.
And it requires a lot of discipline, I guess.
Yeah, it takes quite a lot to do all of that.
But in the end, it's a melody that everybody remembers.
Yeah.
I mean, I brought my 10-year-old daughter to a musical box concert. She was pretty familiar with music, and she was crying.
Yeah, oh well, that's interesting.
Yes.
I hope not crying because it was too loud.
No,
but,
not at all.
she liked the emotional.
No, it's I mean, all these songs like cinema show, musical box, it was so you could feel the emotion in the room. You know, it's very powerful.
Yeah, well, it is very powerful music, and it's very emotional music, written by all these repressed English guys. So funny
written by kids. I always think written by kids.
Yes, well, we were practically children when we did it, so we were very young, and that's part of the enduring appeal of it. Is that much of it is written with songs without any choruses. They have titles, but they don't have as many repeated refrains. What they have is scenes, almost like films. You know, the musical continuum, the long story. So it's. I'm amazed that it survived as long as it has, but I'm very pleased that it continues on. So I try and keep the flag flying for that, as well as
you're doing great.
The solo stuff.
Cool. So I was wondering, when you were a kid, who inspired you to play to start to learn to play guitar?
Well, my first inspiration was really my father musically, because he could play a number of instruments, and I was trying to play ever since I was 2 years old, since I was learning harmonica. But by the time I was 9 or 10, I was listening to The Shadows, and Hank Marvin, I thought, was a marvellous guitarist, and I've since met him and spent a little time with him. He's a very nice guy, sweet guy. Again, he's another very modest guy. Surprised that the songs have lasted that long, and the appeal of all of that. And but in a way, it becomes part of your DNA. It's classic. It's part of my emotional calendar and part of who I am. So I listened to him. I listened to the Beatles, of course. I listened to the Rolling Stones. I copied many of the things that Keith Richards and Brian Jones did. I was very keen on R&B, all of that. And then I heard Andres Segovia playing Bach on one guitar, and my life was never the same ever since. So
that's the classical influence.
There was the classical influence, so there was the Baroque influence, and there was the blues influence, really. And these two separate schools started to talk to each other with all the bands that I've talked about. People who aspired to do what the modern jazz quartet had done, which was to mix blues and Bach. That was the name of one of their albums. So that time was interesting. Around about 1960, people thought, let's try and break down the prejudice, and maybe jazzers will listen to classical, and classical people will listen to jazz, and
make a mix.
Make a mix, yes.
That's interesting. And how do you explain that if you take all the guitar heroes from that time, you're one of the only ones to keep playing progressive music?
Yes. Well, I don't really know what progressive is. I think I try and play in as many different genres as possible. So
no limits.
No limits. No, it's a collision of cultures and a kind of pan-genre approach. So far I've played with classical people, I've played with jazz people, and it seems possible to do all of that and to be a crossover artist, and I've had occasional crossover hit albums, so I've been very lucky to have had the ear of people as diverse as John Lennon and Yehudi Menuhin, who were people I remember seeing on TV arguing at one point. So there's an agreement somewhere, this small corner of agreement with these influences from all over the world. If you listen to everything, you can make something up.
So since we're talking about guitar heroes, yesterday in France there was David Gilmour playing, Gilmour, and I wanted to know if you know him, if you're familiar with his work, if there are things you like or don't like.
Yes, I'm familiar with his work. I don't know him personally, but I'm familiar with his work, and I think he's a very gifted, very nice nice guy who realises he's been very lucky and has a social conscience. So I think I think he's got a big heart, and people love him for that. It would be nice to meet him one day and compliment him on his work. No, I haven't.
Because you guys were touring at the same.
That's right. Yes, yes. I didn't really get a chance to talk so far, but maybe it will happen at some point. I mean, I know we've attended some of the same events, but it hasn't always been easy to connect.
Schedule, I guess.
Connect. Yeah, it doesn't always work out.
So how come you only play one concert in France? It's always Paris and the rest of France?
I don't get invited to as many places in France as I would like. I'm going to be invited to Monaco this time. So
that's not France.
That's not France. Well, I know it's Hollywood. I know. But anywhere in France will do.
Lyon would be nice.
I would love to play Lyon, Marseille, Annecy, Bordeaux. Yes, and on and on and on. The cold places and the warm places. Froid et chaud.
Exactly.
Absolument.
Exactly.
J'espère.
So something a little bit sadder amongst the sad news of the year: the passing of Chris Squire.
Yes.
And he was a good friend of you.
Are we?
So I was just wondering if you want to share something like a nice souvenir, something.
Quel dommage, très triste. Not good. The passing.
I can imagine you've known him for.
We were friends for a long time, and we got together. We got to work increasingly in recent years, and
he seemed to be a very funny guy. He was always.
He was very funny and very enthusiastic to work with. So humour was important to him, and we worked together in a very relaxed, unpressured way. Very, very easy to work with. I think he was a great band leader, a great musician, great composer, and I think he was a lead player working with the bass, and came up with iconic riffs, iconic lines. I hoped to do more work with him. I'm lucky to have been the last person on earth to have worked in the studio with him on Love Song to a Vampire from Wolflight. So that makes that track special to me, amongst other things. And I sometimes, when I do that live, dedicate that to Chris. I don't always, because I don't want to bring down the audience, but it's part of the great sound that he had and the great reinforcement that he brought to rock. I think he was quite modest in many ways. I don't think he thought of himself as a hero. He thought of himself as he said, Eddie Jobson. So not Eddie Jobson. Eddie, who used to produce the Yes albums. The engineer. Eddie Offord. That's it. Eddie Offord. Excuse me, Eddie Jobson. Eddie Jobson, very clever too. Eddie Offord, mixing those early Yes things. He said Eddie used to like to mix the bass very loud in the mixes, and he said as a result of that, he said I became a world famous bass player. He thinks it's because of that, but it's also the fact that he had all that top on the instrument as well. So that iconic Rickenbacker sound.
And he was playing very melodic.
Very melodic. That's right. They aren't just bass lines; they are melodies that work. Sometimes not really even under the song, but sometimes they sit right in front. And funny enough, we worked on a track called, what was it now? One of the tracks on the Squacket album. He actually asked me to turn down the bass. He said, I think it might be Storm Chaser. He said, I think it might be better if you turned down the bass a bit.
Coming from a bass player, that's...
I know.
It's nice.
Yes. But he played, there's, I think one of the best bass things he did on that album was on Divided Self. you hear the melody of the bass playing. While I'm doing a guitar solo, he's doing a bass solo at the same time, and it's a lovely melody that he's doing. So I think we were kind of made for each other, me and Chris. You know, we were both of the same mind. We both loved orchestras, we loved choirs, we loved classical music, we loved groups, we loved it all.
Nice.
And yes, of course I miss him. And then you know, when I go through the same door, I hope to meet him on the other side and do some more work, because I think we just scratched the surface of what we might have been able to do together. I think it might have been really extraordinary.
Yeah. Okay. I have one last question, which is a bit more personal. So
Sure.
I've had the great privilege to have you play a solo on my album.
Yes.
I want to thank you for that, by the way. And I wanted to know what's your approach when you play a solo for someone else and when you play a solo for one of your own songs. How does it differ? How do you approach it?
How do I approach it when I'm working for someone else? When I'm working for someone else, I try and ruin the record completely. And when I work for myself, I do my very best work. No, actually, what I mean is, it's the same approach. I try and do what's right for the song.
Yeah.
I try and find the right notes, and it's a cross between improvisation and something that's written, and then it gets refined.
But I mean, when you
Much like
play
Genesis
for
songs.
one of your own songs, you probably already have the idea of what you want. Or not?
Yeah, at some point, but I leave some things open so that I can be inspired by the sound, or
Like, I mean, like the fifth solo?
fifth of fifth.
Fifth
Yeah.
solo, was it all written before, or was it kind of improvised when you wrote it?
Well, the melody is written because because you hear it on piano and flute, and so in that way it's written. But the other things around it are really improvised. The things that are not playing the fixed melody, and again I was thinking of the things that linked certain bands. To be honest, there's a certain amount of Steve Howe in there, there's a certain amount of Robert Fripp in there, there's a certain amount of Steve Hackett in there, there's a certain amount of Tony Banks, there's also a certain amount of you know, French impressionistic music. There's you know, certain effect of the Gnossiennes, you know, that's slightly oriental but not quite, you know, classical and oriental, and an aspect of Eric Satie, and there's a tiny bit of Bach in there, and there's all of those people in there, really. So it's a crossroads of all of those things, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. Well, that's it. I'm done. Thank you very much, Steve. It was
That's
lovely.
it. Thank you.
My first
All
interview.
the best. Yes.
Thanks.
Au revoir.